Welcome to Law Next. This year's ILTACON, which starts later this week, marks the second anniversary of Harbor, a company formed through the merger of three long-established legal consulting firms, HBR Consulting, LAC Group, and Wilson Allen, and that formally launched at ILTACON in 2023. The company's been making waves ever since, culminating in the news in June that it received a majority investment from BayPine LP, a private investment firm devoted to driving digital transformation in market-leading businesses. Part of what makes Harbor particularly interesting is that it sits at the intersection of corporate law departments, law firms, and technology providers, helping all three get more value from their relationships. My guest today is the CEO of Harbor, Matt Sunderman. In our conversation, Matt and I explore Harbor's mission to provide legal departments with end-to-end solutions that span strategy, legal technology, operations, and intelligence. We also talk about the current state of digital transformation in legal, from the opportunities and obstacles around generative AI adoption, to the surprising reality that many firms are still only 10 to 40% cloud-enabled. And Matt offers his perspective on what law firms and corporate legal departments should be doing today to prepare for the next decade. As for me, I'm Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before I get to any of that, please take a moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Make your life easier with Practice Panther, the leading case management software. With easy-to-use features such as automated billing, customizable workflows, and seamless client communications, you can accomplish more in less time. Trusted by tens of thousands of lawyers across 170 countries, Practice Panther is a partner you can rely on. Visit practicepanther.com today to see how you can take your practice to the next level. You didn't go to law school to waste time writing and responding to discovery requests. Never waste time on discovery again with BriefPoint. BriefPoint drafts your discovery responses and requests for documents within minutes of your first sign-in. BriefPoint is the most reliable discovery drafting solution on the market, and it works right out of the box. Get your first document drafted by going to briefpoint.ai and clicking Get Started. No credit card required. BriefPoint. Draft what matters, automate the rest. Now let's get to today's conversation. Matt Sunderman, welcome to Law Next.
Thanks for having me today, Bob.
I'm looking forward to speaking to you. I feel like there's hardly a day that goes by that I don't see some news about Harbor somewhere going on in the world. You guys, for a sort of 2-year-old company, you guys have been awfully busy and doing a lot lately, and we'll get to why I say sort of 2-year-old company, I guess. But I wonder if we could just kind of start with, for those who might be unfamiliar with Harbor, can you describe what it is Harbor does and what makes it distinct in the kind of legal services and technology landscape?
Yeah, thanks. And I like that you picked up on the 2-year-old company, because that's how we identify ourselves, and we can double click on that. So Harbor is focused on really the legal ecosystem. So what we describe that as is corporate law departments, law firms, and then sitting in the center, the providers, oftentimes tech, but it can be non-tech providers that engage with either of those two constituencies. And really at the highest level, we fundamentally focus on two different things for both corporate law departments and global law firms. One, an overly used word, but I'll use it today, is digital transformation. And for what that means for us is a whole host of things we can get into. And the second piece is operational transformation. So really what we're focused on is helping our clients both operationally and, through technology, improve the ways in which they work, improves the ways in which they interact with each other, quite frankly, because that's where we feel like we're a little bit unique, is that we sit between both parts, law firms, corporate law departments, and technology providers, and can ideally help each of the three within that constituency get more value out of their partnerships.
Well, let's go back to that point you mentioned double clicking on, but Harbor was formed in 2023 through a merger of HBR Consulting, LAC Group, and Wilson Allen. Can you kind of talk about how that came to be and why that happened?
Yeah. So I was preparing for ILTA this morning, actually. We've had an internal call, and we launched at ILTA 2 years ago. And so ILTA's in, I think, about 3 weeks. I might be slightly off. It'll be our official 2-year anniversary. And what we were thinking about then was, each of those 3 organizations had spent somewhere between 15 and 30 years in legal services. So I grew up in the HBR part of the 3 that you just referenced, and the founders of that organization go back to the mid-70s. So Brad Hildebrandt, Baker Robbins, those are 2 kind of institutional, long-standing, legal-focused consultancies. That's the HBR, are those 3. And similar for LAC Group and Wilson Allen, like deep history in legal. And when we were looking at how our clients were interacting with third-party providers, we saw a huge opportunity for our clients to get a deeper, wider expertise set to help them solve what they were looking to accomplish. So that sounds great, but the why is probably more important. As we were looking at what clients needed, like there's assessment work, traditional consulting, there's implementation work, and then there's post-go live support. How do you support a client after you've implemented? And each of those 3 businesses had different focal points. Like I would say HBR was more of an assessment implement. Wilson Allen was more of an implementation. LAC Group was more of a managed services provider. And we looked at our client base. We felt like there was an opportunity to, 1, provide more end-to-end integrated solutions, partnerships with our clients, and then 2, help them on a holistic journey of assess, implement, manage, as opposed to just solving one of those discrete, opportunities.
Yeah, you mentioned assess, implement, manage, and I looking at your website, and I keep seeing the phrase several times: strategy, legal technology, operations, and intelligence. I mean, does that kind of sum up the overall scope of your mission?
Yeah. What we're trying to do, and this maybe isn't the aspirational tagline that we ascribe to, but tactically is that, right? How do we bring to bear those 4 things that you just hit, Bob? So strategy, legal ops, intelligence, some of those different dimensions. The other piece that I didn't hit in the first part was global. And the global is an important part of that equation. Each of those 3 heritage businesses that I just referenced that you asked about were all predominantly North American focused. And we saw another opportunity. Our client base was starting over the past decade, become more global, become more complex, have operations, have more scale, have more headcount, have more attorneys outside of North America. And so in addition to, assess, implement, manage across those 4 different pieces that you hit, we wanted to have a global delivery and global sales and global integrated offering to help those organizations as they continue to expand their footprint. How do we match that with them?
As you're coming on this 2-year anniversary, and as we talk about kind of your formation and organization, you just had news last month of majority investment from private investment firm BayPine LP. Yeah. So what does that mean for you, for where you're headed, for your clientele and your customers?
Yeah, I had I can't be too obvious in who it is. So it's a CIO of a global 10 firm asked me this exact question yesterday. So I haven't had a chance to get to everybody, post transaction. I won't answer the question first because I'll say how I responded it to him, Bob, and then I will answer the question directly. So a couple things that we think are really important is that mission that I set out at the onset still holds true. So like we're still focused on the legal vertical. We're still trying to bring to bear offerings to corporate law departments and law firms. We're still trying to round out our global capabilities. So that's kind of the North Star of the organization. So like similarly direction, because, sometimes when this happens, I find organizations say, well, now we want to go focus in on accounting and consulting, or isn't government interesting, or there's large insurance companies that have similar needs to law departments and law firms. So one of the things that our management team was most excited about BayPine is there's high alignment around continuing the journey of focus around serving the client base that we have. The second part is, and we've been really intentional about this throughout our journey, is hyper focus on the client-centric nature of when we've brought other acquisitions into Harbor, making sure that our clients didn't feel the pain of another company going through a transition, right? So when we acquire a company, they have to come get integrated. You've got tactical things like billing and systems, and you've got strategic things like relationship management. And we want to make sure we stay focused on that for the benefit of the client. So kind of where we're going and how we're thinking about our client base is consistent. I would say the 3 things that we're focused on in working with and why we're excited about the BayPine investment capital are, 1, They are a private equity firm that is focused on helping organizations navigate the digital transformation that the rest of the economy has to go through over the next, we could say 1 year, we could say 10 years, and we'll both be wrong. So what they mean by that is, historically BayPine has been technology investors from a management team, not necessarily, not BayPine. The folks that are part of BayPine have historically been technology investors. As BayPine, they have a different thesis. And if you look at the market cap of all companies, I'm going to quote their quote, so don't fact check me on this one, but only 10% of the market cap is actually technology companies. And the other 90% of industries and markets, organizations also have to go through this transition that all professional services firms do. Harbor, our clients, corporate law departments, law firms, and their thesis is how do they help, based on their technology expertise, clients and their investments navigate this period of time. So one is we've been on this journey for a number of years on our side, but we believe the expertise that they bring and the focus that they have around the digital transformation, both internally that we need to go through and externally what our clients need to go through, is like where they're hyper-focused, uniquely outside of traditional tech organizations. So they're not looking to make this investment in, I'll pick on legal tech, not that they wouldn't love these organizations, but the Laterras or Elites or Intaps, or how you might think about a technology legal-based Harvey based investment. So it's, how can they help organizations like us navigate this time? One. Two is, so there's expertise. Two is just growth capital. So we had a prior investor that was a great partner of ours, but also just lower middle market and had less access to capital for us to make those internal investments and think about the external. The third is, if you think about Harbor, I talked a lot about global, and I talked about a lot about two end markets. We've been less focused on the corporate end market for us outside of North America. So how do we accelerate and think about where those growth opportunities both might be in North America, but outside North America? Our global expansion has been predominantly law firm focused. So how do we work with, BayPine and leverage some of the growth capital to think about that both organically and inorganically? And then finally, underpinned on all that is just tech enablement. So investments on how we interact with clients, investments on how we deliver solutions to our clients, investments, how we continue to work on making our delivery be more consistent and less human centric. So all of those things are kind of underpinning, how we think about the growth opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You talked about Brad Hildebrandt in the early days of kind of a more of a management consulting focus firm. But given the kinds of expertise you now have and the kinds of services I imagine your clients are looking for, whether spanning strategy or operations or whatever else, it's all tech enabled, right? I mean, it's all driven by tech. It's not a separate category at this point.
No, and that early in so I was a colleague of Brad's when I first started at the H part. So it was very much separate, right? Very much separate. You had a records group that was responsible for information governance, and then a team that managed the boxes, and then another team that managed the technology. And today, to your point, every initiative is either underpinned or accelerated or augmented by technology. So there's no bifurcation of that in any of the things that we do, whether it's the strategy, the operations, legal tech, or intelligence. It all has a technology enablement component.
Yeah. You've said that your client base is law firms, corporate legal departments, but could you kind of break that down in terms of who are the firms and departments that are coming to you? What are the kinds of challenges that they're facing when they're, sending you an email or picking up the phone and giving you a call?
Yeah. So when we talk about those two, just to orient who within the constituency, it's generally about Fortune 1000 organizations. So scaled corporate law departments on one size. We definitely work with smaller organizations, but it's usually some of the larger. And then on the law firm side, it's typically the global 300 or 400. Which are predominantly North American based, both by headcount and revenue, as you know. So it's a good question. And one of the things that we try to be pretty intentional about is you should think about calling us and pick up the phone to call us. To the extent people pick up the phone to call, it's an email or text. Right. But if people ever did call, I say the only time anyone ever calls you anymore is to deliver bad news. That's the only time anyone picks up the phone. Where it's otherwise it's email or text or Teams. But we try to operate at three different points of the organization, and then I'll hit the ways in which. So one is we try to help at the enterprise level. So that's managing partners, executive director conversations around things like how should we be thinking about at a macro our digital transformation? And if we are thinking about how does that change our organizational structure? And when we do that, what should our headcount and tech budgets look like? So that might be at the enterprise level on a law firm conversation. And how does AI play into that? How does data play into that? How does getting to the cloud play into that? How does tech rationalization play into that? So it's, kind of at the management level of the firm. The second place that we try to position ourselves for is what we would call like the departmental or the domain. So we also interact a lot with just a CIO or just a CFO or just a COO around a discrete thing. So I'm a CFO at a global 10 and we're thinking about upgrading our financial system. That's another place that we might play. And then also we've tried to position the organization one click below that, where even within you've got managing partners and executive directors, CFO, but within the CFO, obviously you've got a lot of functional directors, technologies, nuanced processes. We also want to be able to support, I've got a billing issue, client X, and we are having a problem with our tech companies, and how do we solve for the billing process technology and issues? So how we're trying to think about Harbor's journey is we want to be able to interact with our clients at top of the house, functional heads, and then also solve very discrete problems. And we work pretty fluidly between those points.
So I was going to ask you if you could give me an example of kind of a success story, but it sounds like from what you're saying that the success story would depend a whole lot on what the mission was in the first place.
And who the primary point person is initially, because it's a little bit of like meet them where they're at, right? And sometimes it's just a really discrete billing problem. Sometimes it's a finance system or organizational problem. And sometimes it's an enterprise technology roadmap opportunity, right? And so each of those three play out in different ways, depending on, where the firm's at, what their priorities are. Still a lot of organizations, as I'm sure you know, do still kind of drive decision-making at the functional or the departmental level. But we're starting to do more and more of, how are we setting enterprise vision and executing against it?
I'm speaking with Matt Sunderman, the CEO of Harbor, who has been describing how Harbor works with clients at different levels, from enterprise strategy down to discrete operational issues. We've also touched on the idea of digital transformation, but when we come back, I want to explore what digital transformation really means in practice and how Harbor is helping law firms and legal departments fundamentally rethink the way they work. Before we get to any of that, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. Don't let repetitive administrative tasks slow you down. With Practice Panther, the leading all-in-one legal practice management software, you'll save over 8 hours per week with automated workflows, streamlined billing, and secure client portals. Join the tens of thousands of lawyers using Practice Panther today and get back to doing what you do best, which is help your clients. Visit PracticePanther.com today to discover why Practice Panther is the industry-leading case management software in the market today. If you're still spending hours drafting complex agreements from scratch, it's time to meet Paxton. Paxton is the legal AI assistant built for firms of all sizes. It helps you find the right language, draft with precision, and handle tricky clauses, all without missing a detail. Lawyers trust Paxton to turn hours of drafting into minutes. One said, quote, "An operating agreement with 3 or 4 customizations used to take 2 to 3 hours. Now it's maybe half an hour. No long-term contracts, easy to use, and you can try it free. Get started today at paxton.ai and let them know we sent you." Welcome back to Law Next. I'm speaking with Matt Sunderman, CEO of Harbor. Before the break, we were talking about how Harbor engages with clients at multiple levels within their organizations. He's alluded several times to working with clients to help them strategize about and achieve digital and operational transformation. But what exactly do we mean by that? Is it about innovating? Is it rethinking how they do and what they do? As we return to the conversation, that's where we pick up. Let's get back to it.
you've talked a couple of times about digital transformation. I don't know is that sort of synonymous with innovation at a law firm or a legal department? Are you working with customers to kind of really help them rethink how they do what they do?
Absolutely. If I were to tell you that was 100% of the work, I would be fabricating the reality. But we do spend a lot of time on that. We're still also, in addition to that, so we're thinking about how do you transform the way in which maybe you deliver a specific area of law, like that's a practice of law transformation. We're helping clients think about how do we deploy modern technologies, and I'm using that word intentionally. So not AI necessarily always. Sometimes it's just good old fashioned, business process automation. And we help clients think about what technologies should they use and how should they deploy it for the purposes of practice of law and business of law. And then we also help clients just modernize their systems, infrastructure, and data. Kind of all of that would fall into, transformation for us. And oftentimes there's a lot more work than some of our clients still appreciate on that last rung, just modernize their data and systems to allow them to, fully enable or take advantage of the new technologies or the new potential that is in front of them to transform.
Yeah. Again, you didn't just appear out of nowhere 2 years ago. You had long histories of the three different organizations that came together to form Harbor, but you did create this new entity, in the early days of the generative AI transformation within the legal industry. So I'm curious how you, as a business, not you personally, but you as a business, incorporating generative AI into the work that you do, and then how are you helping your clients incorporate generative AI?
Both. So we before whenever it was in 2022, like the official launch, we already had an internal team.
November, wasn't it?
November, yes. We had an official team internally that was focused on 80%, how are we doing it internally for ourselves? One. Two is probably 10 to 15% for clients. So we're already thinking about the service delivery. And then third is like net new solutions that we're bringing to market. And so the individual who leads that for us, history with IBM, history with William Blair, doing, advanced technologies, and then, teaches the master's program at University of Chicago here in based where our headquarters are. And so things that we're thinking about doing is, we've built things to make our onboarding process more seamless. We've done things to make so that when people query just internal procedures, standard operating procedures we have, how do you access information so that, traditionally you might have had to call a representative in talent or legal or IT. And we've deployed that kind of at scale across different facets of our business. We've also, on service delivery, we've tried to standardize and automate kind of how we do assessments. So we do a lot of assessments for different areas, but how do we leverage modern technologies, particularly when it's, interview based and there's a lot of information, to create more standardized outputs. And then also we've leveraged the new technologies, particularly in the area of intelligence. So you hit that in terms of one of the things that we're thinking about. Mm-hmm. But obviously the technology is very, very powerful for accessing public, private, proprietary information and data when we're providing intelligence, reports or information for our clients. And we leverage that technology in that space. So those are kind of three examples, some of which are operational in nature, internal for our talent or legal functions. Some are for the whole business assessments, and others were for discrete parts of our business, our intelligence practice. And so we've tried to deploy that expertise across the business in each of those dimensions. To date, I think a lot of the go forward partnership with BayPine and just continued investment we're making at Harbor on this front will be around those things, those three pieces. So how do we make it easier for our employees to engage with the enterprise? How do we make it easier for our employees or our consultants or professional services members to create deliverables for clients? And then how do we modernize our deliverables that maybe historically weren't delivered in such a tech-enabled way?
Yeah. And what about on the client side? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the opportunities and obstacles to adopting generative AI in law firms and corporate legal departments?
Well, the huge opportunities and obstacles, right? As I'm sure you're acutely aware of as well. And again, some of it depends on like who we're talking to in an organization. Sure. And where the organization is at, right? So, conversation with managing partner that only reads the American Lawyer Headlines believes that they're decades behind a technology that's only existed for a couple of years because, there's a lot of puffery potentially in some of the, what it can do and or how it's being deployed. So when we're talking to like senior executive, it's a little bit around what is happening in the market that is making meaningful impact versus the headlines. One. Two is, what technology have you already invested in that there's an opportunity to deploy in a different way than you need a net new technology to do something? Because oftentimes there's, we did a recent inventory for a global 30 and found there were north of 7 technologies that the organization already had that could do some or most of the functionality of the net new technology that they wanted to bring into the organization. So it's a little bit of just, what do you have and what haven't you maybe deployed successfully that you could leverage and or assess something new? And then most importantly is, are you ready and what is the specific use case? So the are you ready is your information organized? Do you know what you're pointing it at? Is your back end infrastructure cloud enabled? Do you have the right security provisions set up? Do you have a training program? Have you thought about governance? So just all of these are you ready kind of conversations. But more importantly, what are you pointing it at and what's the benefit? Are you looking to automate something? Are you looking to innovate something? Are you looking to eliminate something? So, why are you deploying this new technology in the business of law or the practice of law? So a lot of different conversations that happen across what I just hit, but trying to help organizations navigate and effectively deploy these technologies, is a key focus of ours on both the corporate side and the law firm side. I'd say corporations probably are a little bit more advanced, and because, they have the enterprise of a Fortune 10 or a Fortune 100 has a lot of AI advanced technology initiatives that the general counsel's office is participating in, and or they've already made investment in enterprise technologies at scale that they can take advantage of versus I'd say law firms are, less sophisticated necessarily as it relates to, the enterprise investment in some of these technologies.
When you're having those conversations with kind of the senior partners or the senior executives, and you're kind of doing a little bit of level setting, I guess, in terms of what's happening with this technology, there's been so much, as you say, puffery, you said, I might say hype, about the transformative nature of generative AI in its impact on legal practice and the legal profession over the coming years. What's your own perception on that, having been in this industry for a number of years?
Yeah, we're really bullish on the opportunity, right? So like the potential of impact in automation, innovation, elimination of things that could be used to hire is like, we're pretty bullish, both for both corporations and law firms. So I always go back to, let me think about how many. There's been 3 or 4 like technology transitions, all of which I thought that both the law firms and the amount of legal work, as well as maybe the services organizations around them, might be impacted, right? And so this is just where I started. I mentioned the bankers' boxes that were sent in offsite facilities that weren't even indexed, right? Like Step 1 was, can we find the boxes? Can we index them so we can find a proper matter file? Step 2 was, could we scan them? Step 3 was, could we host them? Step 4 was, can we actually host and find the information? Step 5 is, can we stick it in the cloud and make it even more efficient? Step 6 is, let's build some workflow. And now step 7 is, we're on to, let's deploy the new technology to continue to enhance that. And what we've found over the past 3 decades is just legal demand through all of these technology changes continues to outstrip the humans, that the supply of humans that are available to do it. So like our point of view, and we're bullish on the legal end market, clearly, Harbor as an organization, and we're here to support our clients, is that this is a way to get at and or improve some of the legal service delivery, and there will be disruption versus eliminate. Because we study this, on the corporate side, the number one obstacle for them getting to what they can do is just too much work, not enough people. Should help solve it. And then, you and I have studied law firm growth over the past decade, and it's been pretty good. But there's still a supply demand issue. I think the last time I looked, we talk to lawyers a lot. We assume everybody's a big law partner. Maybe you don't assume that, but you talk to more big law partners than the average person. And the last time I looked, there's 35,000 big law partners in the AmLaw 100. So there is a little bit of a supply and demand of, if you want an expert in a specific topic that isn't conflicted, there aren't hundreds of thousands of experts walking around. So I do this a lot. I think it allows the experts to get to more matters.
Sticking with legal technology, are there other trends or particular kinds of technology or platforms that have you kind of excited right now? Are there other things you're interested in besides generative AI that you think are making some change or having an impact on the industry?
Yeah, I mean, still some stuff that, we talked about ILTA. So ILTA will produce its report, but there's still a ton of work and ton of opportunity in the foundational pieces on the technology front. So data, host of systems, enterprise legal specific, practice specific, business area specific. We still think there's a lot of good old fashioned just process improvement, workflow, which oftentimes, is confused with AI. Sometimes it's just workflow. And then third is just, what are you, predictive? So how do you get a bit more like predictive in your analytics and data sets? And then underpinning all that is there's still a tremendous cloud adoption that has to happen in legal. Depending on the application that you're talking about, our client base is somewhere between 40% and 10% in the cloud still. There's a lot of not as exciting, not as new technologies that still have to be adopted at scale that are enablers to the things that, the managing partners want to see deployed.
I continue to be surprised by that. I don't know why, but every time I have a conversation with somebody at a law firm about why they're not in the cloud, I continue to find it surprising. But they're getting there. They're definitely getting there. They're getting forced to get there. I think
yes.
Some of the providers are discontinuing their support for on-premises platforms, or at least announcing their plans to do that.
Yes, that'll be part of it. And you don't get access to the new modern emerging technologies if you don't. So
yeah, especially the AI stuff is really driving a need to be in the cloud. Curious on a kind of a personal level, but you have now led, even though you were with HBR for many years, you've now led this new company through a real juncture, a transition point, bringing together these three organizations. What have been the challenges for you? What have you learned about leadership that you didn't know 2.5 years ago, say?
That's a good one. And off script maybe a bit. I think number one is, I think the thing that early on I think was important around leadership in the formation of Harbor was an aligned mission, vision, strategy, and like, where are we going after, right? And so I referenced that relative to BayPine specifically, but our team was excited about them as a potential partner because we all have spent, we had a management meeting with like 10 of us at one point in time, and we said, we had 300 years of legal experience in that meeting. So obviously there's a lot of commitment, connection, passion, and energy around that. So it's just, how do we have a center of gravity and force, towards that common goal that we all saw as an opportunity early on. But then more importantly, is we also integrated 7 other organizations too. So we've, been fairly inquisitive outside of the initial 3. Is that the number one most important thing is just building relationships. So I was in client service delivery, and I felt like the important part when you're, moving up, like, it's domain expertise. Sure. It's working hard. Yeah. Being like, all these things, but just building relationships as we've tried to build Harbor, as we've added new companies to Harbor, as we've added new people, we've added new leaders, C-level leaders, layer 1 leaders. It's just the relationships. And I think that's really the DNA of Harbor, and why we've, to the extent folks have feel like we've been successful. Why we've been successful is because of that. Like, it's a very relationship centric organization that hopefully our clients feel, and how we interact with them and our commitment to this space and each other.
You wrote a blog post about the BayPine investment in which you said, we're just getting started. So what's ahead for Harbor?
Yeah, so we do feel like it was pretty, as you said, 2 years, right? 2 years from the launch of Harbor. Yeah. We're both an old and a new company, which is good and bad, right? The old part is it's hard maybe to change some things that are institutionalized. The new is we feel like we're just scratching the surface on our mission. So that mission being like, how can we create the premier end-to-end, services provider for the largest, most complex organizations that, we want to do business with. And so I mentioned some of those pieces, Bob, like, we're early on our corporate law department journey. We're even earlier on our non-North American. On the law firm side, we've got a lot more work to do in concert with helping our clients on their digital transformation, AI deployment journeys over the next 5 to 10 years. And we see a lot of upside and opportunity and continuation of the direction that we've been in to help support.
Yeah. I guess just to wrap up, I know we're short on time, but what do you think are the biggest opportunities over the next decade for the customers that you serve, the clients that you serve, law firms, corporate in-house legal departments, and what should law firms be doing today to prepare for those opportunities?
So on the law firm
Simple
side,
question, right?
yeah, well, I mean, because it's a little bit different too, depending on, when we talk to corporate law department clients, they're responsible for risk mitigation and cost management, right? Like managing their risk profile and their cost. And when we're talking to law firms, their primary responsibility obviously is to practice law and deliver high quality, but they're trying to grow revenue and grow careers, and same as any, business that's out there. So on the law firm side, we think the biggest opportunity is to, so I'll focus on the business services side first, and then I'll go into the practice of law. On the business services side is rethinking about, how you're organized and how you're thinking about service delivery. So service delivery for business services is to predominantly your internal stakeholders, sometimes clients. You hit this early on. I mean, I don't know if you meant to, but everything's tech enabled, right? So there's no such thing as anything strategic or imperative at a firm now is cross-functional in nature by design. That was not the case 7 years ago. Less so the case 5, never the case anymore. So how do they rethink about, organizationally, how are they thinking about innovation, transformation, less in a traditional sense where there's a CHRO and a head of innovation and a head of finance? It's got to be embedded into the way in which they are thinking about working and, kind of deploying their capital and talent. On the law firm side, I think it's this balance of the thing that we track pretty closely is, there's a lot of thought around the disruption of technologies being embedded into legal services and a desire for the pricing models to change, which we've been talking about for the entirety of the 25 years that, going back to the boxes that were in, the offsite storages. What we measure very closely is what's the actual demand for that. And so for the past 25 years, we have a corporate law department survey. Some years it's 19, some years it's 26%. But on average, right now, the demand from the buyer of legal services is to continue to buy them in the same way, on average. So I think the challenge for law firms will be, how do you time that switch? Because I always say, the buy side has to want to change as much as the sell side has to want to change their service delivery. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see play out.
Yeah. I've been asking you questions for half an hour now. Anything else that you'd like to say about Harbor that we haven't touched on?
No, I think you hit good things around history, what we've tried to be thinking about the last 2 years, what's upcoming, particularly given the new growth capital that we've got. And so these are spot on.
Good. Well, congratulations on 2 years. I didn't realize that ILTA was your kind of birthday. So this will probably be out just ahead of ILTA at some point. So that'll be well timed. We will have a little bit of a celebration here.
It's good. I was surprised. I think we launched on the Friday before ILTA 2 years ago, and we fully expected no one to even have looked at it and seen it. And, we had our branding and we had our room, and I was surprised that a big chunk of our client base already had, recognized it and thought about it. So, it was good, and it will always be the spot that it was the official launch because of that.
That's great. Well, Matt, thanks so much. Been a real pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, and sorry about some of the tech issues, and I won't hang up.
Yeah, don't hang up yet. Thanks for joining us for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, you can do so by messaging me on LinkedIn or other social media, or just email me, ambrogi@gmail.com. If you're a fan of the show, leave us a nice review wherever you get your podcasts. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. Please join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.